I'm Martha Maurer with KTAR News. A Valley woman is putting Arizona on the world map with the sport of fencing. Natalie V is a member of the U.S. national fencing team. She's a World Cup champion and is about to break through a historic moment in the sport as the first Latina fencer on Team USA to compete in the Pan American Games. I had a chance to sit down with V to learn more about this important moment in her career. Natalie, thank you so much for being with us.
Yay, I'm so happy to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I can see you're all decked out in USA gear. This has to be so exciting for you that you are representing your country in such an amazing opportunity, which is the Pan American Games that's happening in Cuba.
Yes.
Tell us how you got to this point. I know of your
wow.
career, but if we can just step back just a little bit to just a few months ago, what were you doing? And now you're about to head to Cuba.
Yeah. So, training for the Olympics, which is what I'm doing right now, training for Tokyo 2020. It's a 4-year plan. And I've kind of been training for this for a long time. Actually, I've been fencing for almost 14 years. It'll be my fencing anniversary on Sunday. And I think I've been training for this for 14 years. So.
But you know what? A lot of people, when I've learned, as done a little bit of research about fencing, I've learned that a lot of the people that are either on a championship team or just by professional standards have been doing it since they were maybe 2 years old.
Yeah.
So tell us, was that your process into where you are today?
Yeah, so I started fencing when I was 18, which is really rare for a fencer. I think a lot of my teammates, their dads are fencing coaches, or they started fencing when they're 6, 7 years old. So I guess my route was a little different. But when I started fencing, I grew up dancing and I did gymnastics. And I did some other sports too. I ran track and I swam. And I've always loved using my body, but it wasn't until I found fencing when I was 18 that I felt just as physically challenged as I felt mentally challenged. And, I'd go through an entire day, I'd go through an entire workout, maybe practice would last 3 hours. And at the end, I'd realize that I was exhausted. I'd have no idea the entire time I was fencing because I was so focused on the bout and on my opponent and on tricking them and, and using my moves and staying a step ahead of them that I just wouldn't notice that I would get tired.
You mentioned 18 years old, so you just graduated from high school. Which high school did you go to?
I went to Chaparral High School.
Yep.
What's up, Firebirds? So I graduated from high school. I think it was in May of my senior year. I was reading The Catcher in the Rye, and Fencing Holyfield was the fencing manager, and I thought, wow, that sounds interesting. Fencing? I've always known of fencing, and I saw it in The Parent Trap, but I never saw it in person, so I just called the fencing club, and the fencing coach, the head coach answered, and he invited me to come down, so I went down, and I saw fencing for the first time, and it didn't really occur to me that I would become a fencer. I just thought, oh, this is really cool, I have to try this. And so he said there's a camp, and so I joined and I did a camp, which, by the way, if you're in the Valley, I'm going to host the same fencing camp at my fencing club, Phoenix Falcons Fencing Club, in August. So if you're around, come to our fencing camp. It's the same camp that I started in 14 years ago. So I ended up doing the camp, and there never was this thought oh, this is where I'm going, but I just knew the direction that I was heading, right? And so from the get-go, I was fencing 5 days a week, pretty much all day because it was summer and I had nothing else to do. And I loved it. I was obsessed. I really got bitten by the bug the first day I started fencing.
V fell in love with the sport. Her former coach, Rolando Arroyo at the Phoenix Falcon Fencing Club, remembers V's perseverance, her dedication. He says she has true talent, but more than anything, she has heart, and that's taken her very far. She developed her skills through college and joins the ASU fencing team her sophomore year. So you went to ASU. What did you study?
I studied political science, and I studied sculpture. So I did a BS and a BFA. Which was great. I'm Latina, and I'm from Arizona, and at the time was when, I don't know if you guys remember SB 1070 and all these laws that were really singling out the Hispanic community, and I was really interested to know more about politics and kind of why this stuff was happening. I remember going to protests with my mom growing up. I remember my community of people, the community, the church that I grew up in. I remember they were going to protest, and they, and everyone was up in arms about this stuff, but I just wanted to understand for myself, what's really going on and why. So I studied political science, but I also have an interest in why things work the way that they work, the mechanics of things. So I ended up studying sculpture as well because I love creating, I love building.
V's career took off following her graduation from ASU. She moved to New York City to train with the U.S. women's epee team. She's been living there since and is now a two-time Olympic alternate, a member of the U.S. national team, and a World Cup champion, just to name a few distinctions, the most recent one happening in Dubai.
Yeah, so my team and I, 3.5 weeks ago, it was a historic victory for U.S. fencing. We won for the first time ever in women's epee. We won a World Cup, and we did it together. You know, everyone's kind of always been waiting, like, okay, when is someone going to win a World Cup? When is it, you know? But it's really cool that we ended up doing it all together.
V is about to break barriers. She will be the first Latina fencer to compete for Team USA in the Pan American Games in Cuba.
As a Latina, you know, it's really important that this happens, and it was bound to happen that there would be a Latina representing the U.S. at the Pan American Games. And it hasn't happened before because there's a history of exclusion of Latinos in this sport. My coach, Rolando Arroyo, he's my childhood coach. And I say child, I was 18, but I was still a child at 18. He's my childhood coach from Phoenix, still coaching at the Phoenix Falcons Fencing Club. He was Latino from New York City, and he didn't have access to the top training facilities because he was Latino, right? And so, you know, when you have that kind of a history in U.S. fencing, you know, there's bound to be someone that like breaks through, you know, and I'm like honored that it was me. I'm honored, you know, to have this opportunity to be the first.
Wow, that's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
So if you had a 10-year-old girl and another 17-year-old teenager who look at you, maybe hear this interview or watch this interview, and they say, you know what, maybe I'll give it a try. I've heard about it, I've seen it. You're right, Arizona is not one where you will go anywhere and find a fencing club, but what would you say to them to be their first step to take in order to make it to Team USA?
Yeah, I would say go to the Phoenix Falcons Fencing Club, which is the same club that I started fencing at, and just start fencing. There are other clubs in the Valley also, so if you find another club that's closer to you or that you drive with, like, you know, you can join that club also. So just start fencing and just do it and give yourself to it. You know, it's a martial art. Fencing is a martial art, so it's a journey into yourself, right? Which it has been for me. It's very, very true. And at every step of the way, you're gonna find little things about yourself that you need to kind of, in Spanish we say superar, right? I like that word because it has the word super in it. Don't just do it as much as possible. Let it consume you, let yourself be obsessed. You know, think at every moment of the day, how can I get better? The way that I got better in Arizona was I broke into the top 10 in the US, and I was training as much as possible. But I was also doing other things on my own. So I kind of figured out, all right, what's the game that I want to have in fencing, and how can I support this? So I you know, even though I wasn't fencing like 7 days a week, I still fenced as much as possible. I went to 2 different clubs, and then I did little exercises on my own. So footwork was something I could work on. So I would work on my feet, like back and forth. I would work on cardio. I would work on point control. You know, I set up like a little target area in my room. So there's a lot that you can do on your own, you know, but I just let it consume me.
V's journey continues beyond the Pan American Games. It's pre-Olympic season, and she's focusing on the 2020 Games in Tokyo. Best of luck to Natalie V, a true Arizona pride, and you can learn more about the interview I had with her at KTAR.com. I'm Martha Maurer with KTAR News.
I'm Bob McClay. Here's our top story.